everyone, it's Brooke. Welcome back to my channel. So I'm going to talk today about my experience reading and DNFing the Calculating Stars, but first I want to tell you that I filmed this video previously and spent 12 minutes talking about one problem, and I was just going to post that, but I have like 12 problems, so I'm going to try not to rant about the one thing for 12 minutes. And instead, get through all of the things that I disliked about this to have a more well-rounded argument, right? It's important. So this book is about a meteorite in the 1950s crashing into the earth just off the eastern coast of the United States, killing hundreds of thousands of people, essentially erasing the DC, Virginia area off the map. And then we're sort of spiraling into this oncoming climate apocalypse, and so we have to colonize space to save the human race. And there's a group of ladies who are desperate to be involved in this and to participate and to become astronauts and to, you know, be considered human, but patriarchy, right? So that's the gist. That's the thing that sort of pulls you in, right? Pulled me in, absolutely. My book club decided to read this in October, and I thought it would be perfect for discussion, and then I started to read it. The first 100 pages feel like a different book. It feels like the book that I was promised, first off. And they're very, very good. And that is basically the meteorite crash and the immediate after effects and the days following and what happens, and that tension and the sort of the excitement of that is just so great. Even like the little sciencey bits that are thrown in add to the story. Like, it's just, I had so much hope after that. Like, this is going to be it. This is going to be the book of the year for me. I can feel it happening. And then I continued to read and everything fell apart, and this book stops being about this very high tension subject matter. That story, the space race basically, and this alternate history becomes background. And unfortunately, that's what I wanted the story to be, foreground. So instead, I got Dr. York and her very personal struggle with anxiety as sort of the main plot line, which could be interesting in a book in which I knew going in I was going to be reading about a woman and her struggle with anxiety. But that's not what I was hoping this would be, and I thought it was boring. And I say that as someone who has struggled with severe panic attacks in my life. It was just really fucking boring. Every page. Okay, but like, do I need 300 pages of that? I'm not sure that I do. Beyond that, though, there was no tension anymore. Okay, so each chapter starts with these like little snippets of like what's happening in the rest of the world and how they're being affected, and there's like food riots and all these things that, you know, you would expect to be happening when the climate is changing so drastically and so fast. And those snippets were far more interesting than anything else happening in the book. Those snippets were what I wanted to be reading about. I wanted to know globally these tragic things were happening, like, to give this book, like I said, attention, and that just, the paragraphs, I guess, were supposed to be enough. And when those little snippets are so much more compelling than your just pages and pages of boring dialogue, badly done dialogue, it's like, I just got frustrated, and I got frustrated with some of the details of this. Like, they never really explain, like, how all of this major build rockets, get them going, space race, is being funded. I guess money magically appeared, and we don't talk about that. We don't talk about the fact that, again, because there's no tension, for a good portion of all of these initial like trials and sending rockets and astronauts and blah blah blah, nothing bad happens. None of the rockets explode. All of the people live. It takes about halfway through the book for something sort of bad to happen, and I was like, now it just feels so boring. But the thing that got me reading for 12 hours is the way she does her characters and her politics. This is a very politically minded book. It wears its politics on its sleeve. I'm personally fine with these things, being someone who I think shares those politics. But she's trying to cover so many different issues. Sexism, racism, mental health, just plus a ton more things. Just so many. I did so much going on here that she's never able to do any of them justice. And the shallowness in which they're presented, it feels hurtful. It feels damaging. It feels like it's having the opposite of a good effect, right? It's not being done well, and when these kinds of things are not done well, it's not good. And I think sometimes we can be so starved for representation that we allow bad representation to be praised due to that starvation. And I don't know if that's exactly what's happening with this, but there are some bad things in this book. Her characters are often reduced to stereotypes because she wants to have an Asian woman be a character. But there's no engagement with like what it specifically means to be an Asian woman in the world that she's building. It's just that every other sentence the Asian woman says is spoken in broken English. The end. And bad broken English. Like, it's not even, it's like, I know she didn't listen to someone speak and then like try to write correctly the way that they actually speak. My husband is Taiwanese. I read these sentences out loud to him. I was like, does this even make sense to you? And he was like, no, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't. It's badly done. And even just in a less offensive way, like, people are so boiled down to one sort of stereotype of their identity, like the fact that Dr. York is Southern, and every other page she says, bless your heart, to remind us that she's Southern. And that's just it. It's just a reminder, Southern, reminder, racism, reminder, sexism, reminder, but it's not engaging with. And then it starts to feel very much in her characters like tokenism, and I struggled with it. But what really got me in this book, that she's focusing so much on mental health, right? I've already kind of lost trust with her and Faith because of the way she's done some of her characters. But then, about a little over midway through the book, the very last sentence I read was the last sentence of a chapter in which she uses suicide as like this chapter-ending plot twisty reveal. Like, it's this big spoiler, this revelation, like, got you now, you're suckered in, aren't you? Just, whoa, blew your mind. Suicide. And it felt so gross. And badly done. That is a badly done thing. And when you're dealing with, and it felt like I sort of knew that she hadn't taken the time and care with these issues that she should have. And so I didn't finish the book. And from what I've heard, it's more the same, with finally exciting things happen in the very last chapter, and that this is a duology. So the next book actually covers the space stuff. I think had you cut out everything after the first part of this, so like last 300 pages of this, and just thrown in the second book, probably with a good edit, you would have had a much more compelling story. There are other things that bothered me. I thought that the main character, Dr. York, was very, very not interesting, not very compelling. Like, try to make her big issue be that she struggles with anxiety. Doesn't that make her really complex? Lots of people struggle with anxiety. I don't know that should be like the one thing that's like, isn't she such a 3D character? Don't know. Oh, and sometimes she's white lady racist, which, no shit. Everyone's a white lady racist when you're a white lady, at least sometimes. I don't know. It just, other than that, she was like super good all the time. And then there's her husband, who in the 1950s you would think might struggle with some like patriarchy and some misogyny himself, but no, he is perfect. He always knows what to say, when to say it, how to say it, and he is so far more progressive than any other man on the planet, because of course he is. Okay. And I'm not saying it's not nice to have male characters who are very supportive of their wives, and who are progressive and who are good people, but this didn't make any sense. Like, I have a pretty good husband, but every once in a while I still have to be like, yo, we need to talk about this, because that was not okay. And she just never had to do that. I don't know. So there was too much wrong with this book, not enough right about it to continue. Anyway, that's how I felt about The Calculating Stars. You can yell at me in the comments if you want to. You can tell me all the ways in which I am wrong. You can just feel free. Whatever. I hate all books this year.